So first of all, many times, people ask me, how I got into UX, or some people are like, what is that you do again? Or, when I'm saying I'm a UX designer, I get a blank stare or nervous nodding, or even was like, oh, okay, so you make things pretty. And I think I have a slide that pretty much, summarizes what a UX designer does. So, yeah, this is what, my friends, my mum, society, and myself think I do, which it really is, no, we actually know what we do. But jokes apart, to first ask, answer the question is, well, my background is in graphic design. And I used to work for an advertising agency in Milan, and it used to be called Lowe Pirella, and now the new name is a much bigger group. It's Mullen Lowe Group, and this was in 1999, 2000, around, yeah. So it has evolved quite a lot, and we used to produce printed, and not just printed, also TV adverts for National Geographic and other similar brands. And I was working mainly on the printed adverts, not the TV adverts. So visual has always been my favorite medium. I studied art and learned photography since I was quite young. I studied painting and architecture since a young age. So long story short, how my career evolved, I started from graphic design, then to web design, and to UX. And that's while I was in Italy. Then one day I was like, okay, I think it's time to leave Italy and to move to a sunny place. So I moved to sunny London, and what happened is I started working as a freelancer at the beginning, but then I ended up working with a company, Blue Runner Solutions, who's based in Wimbledon, and I was working as a senior UX designer there with them and mentoring other designers. And what this company does is they design and build tailored apps for the likes of Bentley, Virgin, and all these fancy logos that you can see there. More often than not, during my time there, I wasn't just designing, but I was liaising with the main stakeholders of these companies to brief, and ideate and test solutions that would be tailored around what their needs were. So after that experience in London, I moved to Brighton, and there I started working for another company based in Brighton, Futurely, which is an award-winning cloud-based cash flow and forecasting software. So, and that was before then I started at Avalara as senior UX designer early this year. So what helped me going from web design or graphic design to UX? Obviously, in addition to, studying cognitive science, human-centered computer interaction, and blah, 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 while developing on-site experience, I was, I realized that what really made a difference was I had to get out of my comfort zone and talk to people and learn the art of networking and listening. I realized that, as I was saying before, I was a bit of a geek, a bit of someone would be too comfortable spending time in front of a screen with minimum social interaction. So I went to work as a store manager for a technology retail chain for a few months while I was still working as a freelance web designer. I had enough clients to keep me busy and, and day and night, really. But that experience has taken me away from being just in front of a screen most of the times. And it has pushed me to talk to other humans and empathize with them. And, whilst at the same time, improving my communication. And these, more than anything else, has pushed me further away from being just, a graphic designer who would try and look things nice on screen to become a UX designer. So I developed an actual honest interest in people's pain points and needs and a will to communicate with them. So with that said, what is UX design really? Well, UX design, as you know, if you look online, is this is what you normally would get. It's the process of crafting products that are useful, easy, and delightful by applying psychology principle. That is great, and that is pretty accurate. You could have Googled that yourself, though. So let's start with what UX is not. UX is not many things, but for sure, there are two main things that UX is not. It's not just making things pretty, and it's not, you know, it's not form over function. And don't get me wrong, you know, harmonious, balanced, well-crafted visual design is an essential part for, you know, for a great user experience, but it's not just that. And also another way of seeing things is that what is good UX and what is not good UX. So good UX is not these. So good luck with, you know, finding your floor here and where to go. It's not these either. And, you know, and it's very easy to see here how a bad UX is much easier to spot or remember. So from my point of view, I like thinking that UX design is the art of being curious. It's a holistic approach to problem solving. So, and I will come back to these later. So then, does this mean then anybody can be a UX designer? I would say to some extent, yes. I'm sorry. If your focus is creating a product, you know, that is user-centered, it makes things easier for the user rather than being, you know, tech-centered, then you are already on the right path. And you know, what does user-centered mean? What does making things easier for the user mean? And mainly, how do we get there? How do you do that? Well, for starters, the main thing is that you need to be actively and honestly interested in the people who are going to buy or use your product. And another big thing that I always try to keep in mind is don't assume. Many people in the industry, from designers to engineers to chiefs, they tend to assume that they know better, you know, than the user. They know better what the user needs without having spoken to them once. So a great UX person is curious, like a cat. A great UX designer is a researcher first. And, you know, a great UX designer is someone who wants to know what a day in the life of the user looks like. What do they do? How do they use the product? When and under what circumstances are going to use the product? But even more than that is why. So why do they choose that product? What is the problem that product is solving for them? So I always say, like, one of my favorite, if not my favorite quote is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. From the founder, this is from Marty Kagan, who's the founder of the Silicon Valley Group and the author of a book that I suggest you read, is Inspired. So when you are obsessed with understanding what is causing the problem and how that problem affects a user's life on a daily basis, the solutions can be many, and believe me, they will come so easily. Focusing on the problem to solve, you know, the problem that you have to solve, then focusing on that, it will show you the way, it will show you the path to the solution. And remember, there can be many solutions and they can all be tested. So my advice is, before you jump to conclusions and ideate solutions, get, you know, and even if you get excited about, oh my God, there's this technology that we can use about these, make sure that you have empathized with the user first. The customer needs to always have to come before the technology, and see how in the world, you know, companies that are product-led are winning over companies that are merely tech-led, because they focus on the user first. And I remember there's a very famous video that goes around, and that shows how Steve Jobs answered to an engineer who was kind of challenging him, like saying, "Oh, do you know what you're talking about actually?" And his answer was, "You've got to start with a customer experience, and from there walk back towards the technology." And I really believe that is a great way of putting it. Now, so it's clear that UX design is not about drawing pixels or engineering a website layout without, with the latest, or unfortunately sometimes oldest, technologies available. At least not until and unless those pixels and that layout are serving one purpose only, which is making the final user's life easier in solving their problem. And believe me, if you do that very well, then business reward will follow automatically. So when you do that, people will not only buy a product that makes their lives easier, they will turn into fans, to the extent they'll be queuing for days outside your stores to get a glimpse of your new product. And if there are designers listening, and I know as a designer, I know that feeling. There's constantly the temptation to design for the sake of aesthetics and nothing else. But if you want to be a great UX designer, you'll have to put that urge aside and focus on what the user needs, not what you think looks cool. Obviously, don't get me wrong, you can and should combine the two things. Again, look at Apple as an example of great UX that encompasses, ease of use, problem solving, innovation, and visual appeal. Although, though, even companies like Apple, who, for UX designers is one of the companies you always look up to, even companies like Apple, they fail sometimes. They fall into the trap of aesthetics over usability. I mean, seriously, Apple, this is I cannot believe it. I'm using this mouse and I love it, it feels good and, it's beautiful. But then the moment you have to charge it and use it, you realize that, God, that they could have done much better. So the point is, as product designers, we should always focus on the outcome rather than the output. So what is the difference? What does it mean? Well, pizza. Yeah, I know. I mean, we're lunch and learn, and this quarantine is, you start getting the idea of what I'm focusing on during this quarantine. But jokes apart, why pizza? Apart from the fact that pizza is the solution to everything, but I like using a pizza metaphor actually. So imagine now that you go out to buy a pizza. You're hungry, and you're nearly salivating at the thought of enjoying an amazing pizza with all the toppings you like, hot melty mozzarella, delicious red tomato base. Okay, so you're imagining these, and you get to the store and you find a pizza there waiting for you before you ordered it. So this sounds like an amazing service, huh? Well, that's debatable. The pizza has the wrong toppings and no mozzarella. And how come? What happened? Well, for starters, the pizza place didn't even ask you how you want your pizza. They assumed that you would buy whatever they would produce because they produce it in big numbers and it sells. Technically, can you say that is not a pizza? You can't, because that is a pizza. So this is the output. The story says the pizzaiolo did prepare a pizza base. He followed every step to make a pizza, but it was just another pizza. What's the outcome though? Did you enjoy the taste of the pizza? Did it exceed your expectations, or were you disappointed? Was the pizza average? Did it taste amazing? Were the ingredients carefully put together, or was the base cooked at the right temperature? So are you going, after having the pizza, are you going to tell your friends about how great that pizza was? And apart from the fact, I don't know, you're getting definitely hungry, but, but you know, the pizzaiolo really should empathize with you by asking you what food you love, what your tastes in food are in general. So you would be able to state, for instance, that the pizzas you've tried so far lack a specific ingredient or a specific taste that you love so much, and what that means for you. What I've just described is what you would call qualitative or core research. So core research is very important mainly during the pilot stage of a research project. You use it to discover and gain an in-depth understanding of the individual experiences, opinions, thoughts, trends, so that you can then dig deeper into the problem that you're trying to solve. And there are ways that you can do core research, which some of these are behavioral observations, individual interviews, group discussions, and such. And I know that, again, if there are UX designers in this talk listening, they're probably thinking, I wish it was that easy, or product managers as well. Not everyone has the luxury to have a research team or a budget, and I know because I've been there in the past, but actually there are cheap ways that you can that you can do research, and there's a very good book about these that can give you really good tips about these, and it's Just Enough Research by Erica Hall. So in addition to core research, there's another type of research that that you should always do, which is quant research. Now, quant research, as the name itself suggests, is all about numbers and data analysis. So this type of research is how you find patterns in behaviors and motivations. And the ways to do quant research, there are so many ways, but I'm just giving you a couple of ideas here. You can do surveys, questionnaires, and structured interviews. So this talk is about UX design and UX, but so why am I talking about research? The point is, research is the best tool you have to influence stakeholders and inform your design decisions, and obviously come up with a product that actually the users will love. So core research will help you empathize with the user by understanding the reasons and opinions and pain points. But quant research will give you data, numbers, and patterns which are objective and cannot be ignored, and nobody can ignore numbers, right? So let's say your boss says that the square that you've just designed needs to be red, but you go out, test it with the users, and 80% of them say, I would buy it, or it would solve my pain if that box was blue, not red. Once you have these data, you collected the 80%, you go to your boss, you show it to them, they cannot ignore it. They can't ignore 80%, of the users. So in other words, I think there is a slide that can pretty much summarize the difference between quant and core. And then again, if you look at it, I know what you're thinking: cats, pizzas, ice cream. I'm having a great time during this quarantine, really. But I mean, again, jokes apart, we've talked about the different types of research now. Back to a pizzaiolo. What should our pizzaiolo do? Well, at this point, he should start experimenting with ingredients, trying to mix them to achieve, that taste that is needed for you to enjoy pizza. We'll probably come up with 3 to 5 different pizzas. It will invite you to try them all, like and observe your reactions, listen to your feedback, and until he's ready to trial the pizza for 1 month in his restaurant, for instance. And he will be listening to feedback from other customers, and then he will decide whether the pizza is going to make it permanently on the menu or not. Remember, test is a very important part in the journey of designing a great product. You need to observe the customers interacting with your prototypes before the product is built or launched. A, that will save you a lot of money and a lot of time, but also B, because when you don't test, something like these happen. So you go from just designing how it should look like to how it should feel like, and then once the users start using it, well, that's a completely different story. So it's so important to see when the user actually starts interacting with them, with what you've designed. So what does the life of UX designer look like then? Well, I mean, it can look different ways. I think, again, there's a slide that pretty much summarizes it. So no worries at all. It's all fine. It's good. Yeah, if you're thinking, of going into UX, you're still on time to change your mind anyway. So, but jokes apart, what a day in the life of a UX designer looks like it really varies depending, on the industry and the company size and the team size. For instance, working for a company like Avalara that has a research department is definitely an advantage. Although my suggestion is, even if you have researchers, work with them. Always be involved in research firsthand, especially qualitative research. I would say right now my time is split between 35% research and 65% prototype design, and I'm working with researchers. And obviously this percentage could and will definitely change depending on product stage. As for tools that you can use to do research, there are so many. Again, tools are important, but they're not how you become a UX designer. Right now we're using usertesting.com is really good, and SurveyMonkey for Quant Research. And for Quant Research, we tend to do in person, which obviously right now it's not possible, so we're using Zoom. So after research, how do I approach ideation, after the problem has been defined? I tend to always have mood boards. I like seeing other, how other designers have approached the solution, what is on trend, what it is, what is not working. This helps brainstorming, sometimes brainstorm by myself, and sometimes as much as possible when I can with the rest of the team. I love sketching on paper. I have started ideating. I've never really started ideating solutions directly on the computer. The more complex the problem is, the more putting things on paper helps me approaching the issue from a perspective that is more connected to real life. So that means that sometimes UX design looks more like these and these, before or even ever, if ever, looking like these or like these. So it rarely, you would start with a high fidelity prototype, and again, there, if you start with wireframes, that really helps, and user flows and journey maps. It really helps you seeing where it could work and what could not work, and helps you saving a lot of time. So with that said, lucky you right now is case studies, and I do understand if you want to go have a nap. But actually what it means, I'm just going to very quickly show you one of my works from last year, from when I was a feature lead. And I'm going to, let me get it here, just to show how whatever I've been telling you so far, how that actually looks like, and what it looks like when you're actually doing it. So when I joined Futurely, the company had an old, which still exists, but so they were trying to do cash flow and forecasting for as medium, small businesses, but the old software was not scalable, and mainly it was for people who work in, in accountancy. So it wasn't easy and intuitive enough for a business owner. So we started with research. So what happened was we went through personas. So in the research phase, you will come up with personas, which I would say 2 to 3 personas are enough. It really depends on how big the business, the project and complex the project is. But once you have the first personas to work with, you can start understanding their pain points and their solutions. So we came up with personas by talking to current users, possible future users, and then we found what the problem was. And the problem in this case was that small, medium business owners fear having to deal with cash flow. They don't have time to understand what their financial priorities are. And, and the packages available, that time consuming and blah, blah, blah. And then the next thing is, okay, so now that we found the problem, let's focus on the solution. And we started thinking about, I mean, the iteration was quite long. It wasn't as short as, just doing a statement. So what helped us understanding how we could lay out the solution was working on user journeys, and these are just on my portfolio online. So if you want to go through it later, by yourself in more detail, you can easily do it. But these are user journey maps that tell, that kind of you step into the user's shoes and you walk with them in your mind, and and see what they go through during the process of these pain that they have. Then we started ideating the solutions, and we came up with the idea of having a business newsfeed where you actually have a summary every day of what are the most pressuring or important things that you have to focus on, with a language that would be accessible to any small to medium business without them having to be an accountant or someone specialized in accountancy. So we tried to make it as easy as possible. We went through some wireframing and drawing on the walls and post-its. And then we started working with high fidelity wireframes. And we tested with prototypes. So we started using, trying to test what could work, what could not work at prototype level, to avoid, having to build something that then would have to be rebuilt because we didn't test it enough. With the other designers who were working with us back then, we came up with a design system. So even choosing the color was something that, we tried we tried to align the colors with what we thought was the emotion for that sort of product. All the typography, the icon systems. These are some of the screens which you actually, if you subscribe to Feature, you can see yourself. Then we did release a first to very few users, like in a beta version, and we did some tests, and we realized that the onboarding wasn't working as we believed it would have. So we did some tests, some tweaks, some UI tweaks mainly, and we went from 60% users completing initial onboarding to 87%. That is why it's important to always test. And then when we released it, there were quite a few happy customers, and so going back to my presentation, I'm happy to say you made it. You survived my case study. And before going to the Q&A, I would like to suggest you a few tools in case you were wondering. Google is an amazing source, but for instance, journey maps and flow tools to create user journeys, I find these four really good. We're currently using Visio and Miro in Avalara. I absolutely love Miro. It's one of the softwares with the best user experience, really. A 5-year-old could use Miro. It's really good. Then we have wireframing tools. As I said, for me, papers, paper is always the first wireframes, but Balsamic is also a very, very good tool. Anybody can use Balsamic to do very raw, basic wireframes with no high fidelity at all. And then we have design and prototyping tools. These are just a few, the most popular ones currently. My favorite is Figma. Figma has improved a lot in the last year, and you can design and prototype and do engineering handover with it's much more cost effective, but the level of quality and service is amazing. Sketch is obviously it's quite popular. It's still a really good tool. InVision is just prototyping tool, so you need to design your interface somewhere else and then importing InVision to prototype it. Adobe is great for wireframing as well, but also for designs. And if you're comfortable with that, you already know the Adobe interface, then that is perfect. Then you got FramerX. If you are good at coding, or if you're a designer, you can still use FramerX, but because it's still a designing software, but it has an embedded ability to use code within the designs in the platform. Inside the software. So that is really good. It's React, I think, and Zeppelin is great to store a design system for communication with the engineering teams. And Studio is the design software by InVision. So just InVision is prototyping, Studio is design, and it's actually quite good because you can include some animations within the designs. Again, these are just some of the tools that you can experiment with. The tools are easy to learn, really easy, especially now they are really intuitive. That is not what makes a great UX designer, obviously. Before I go, before we go to Q&A, this is a list of books that I would suggest you read if you're curious about UX design or you want to know more about it. It covers a bit of everything, and also it doesn't just focus on digital products, but it's more about psychology behind design and that sort of stuff. And from me, it's everything. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you're still awake. And these are my handles and my details. Feel free to get in touch anytime. If you have questions, any doubts or anything. And it's time for Q&A now.